Welcome Lights Out family to another episode of After Dark with KK. We all knew when a person dies, he or she will become a ghost or gui in Chinese. But can a ghost die and become something else? According to old Chinese saying, 人死为鬼，鬼死为剑，剑死为息, which translate when a human being pass on, they turn into ghosts. When a ghost pass on, they turn into something called 斩 or 剑. And when a 剑 pass on, it becomes something called 息. The concept of 斩 is like it needs to consume ghosts to survive, so it hunts down ghosts. When ghosts might still retain some form, 斩 is at the edge of losing its physical form, something like the photograph of Marty's siblings in Back to the Future. And when 斩 is decimated, it becomes 息, which is almost described as smithereens. Today, KK will narrate a truly spine-chilling real-life encounter from a former military man from Chongqing, China, who had a brush with death because of some ill fate he came across a 斩. The story was well known on Chinese social media with photographs and video evidence he shared. So let's begin. Hi, my name is Lee. I was in the People's Liberation Army for 10 years before discontinuing my service. My upbringing, education, and time in the military had inculcated me to give a logical explanation to every situation. I never really had the time for, nor the belief in, the paranormal. Due to my new job, I had to move to Chongqing with my wife in early 2021. It was not a big apartment, but it was a comfortable place that both of us loved at first sight. We did not know the history of the previous owners or any of the background. For the first 2-3 months or so, things were fine and we were leading our hectic work life interchanged with a blissful, familiar time. Then sometime in late May, my wife started to complain.
Darling, I think our house might not be clean.
Not clean? I was puzzled by her sudden accusation. We do our routine housework. I don't see any dirty spots anywhere. Even before I could finish my sentence, she went off.
I don't mean that kind of cleanliness. I think our house is haunted. I had been suffering from Gui Ya Chuan for the past week. Each time it was longer and scarier.
Babe, you're talking about sleep paralysis, right? Everyone has that. Are you under too much stress at work of late? I then offered her a calming hug and slowly distract her by bringing her to her favorite coffee place. I thought that episode would be over. Boy, was I wrong. 3 evenings later, I was in the midst of watching a live transmission of a football match from the Euros when I heard a blood-curdling scream emanating from my bedroom. Instinctively, I launched to the source and found my wife in a sobbing mess as she was in a trembling fit. It took a while for her to calm down enough to convey to me her scary encounter.
While I was in the midst of dozing off, I was startled to spot someone walking through the wall beside that door. I emphasized, it's a wall! It was a woman dressed in a really old school uniform with her hair tied in braids. I could see through her. There was no doubt that I had seen a ghost. Then the woman asked, can I come in?
My skeptical alarm was on high alert, but it seems like she was horribly affected by what she had seen. I could only coax her and assured her everything was fine and stayed with her the entire night, foregoing my football match. I thought she would be fine the next day, but her paranoia grew the following day, researching online about what she had encountered and fidgety with any strange sound or sight. I could not help but to sniggle internally. However, the joke will be on me soon. A couple of nights after my wife's ghastly encounter, my sound sleep was disrupted by myself being choked out of breath. I opened my blurry eyes only to realize I could not move as I became the next victim of a sleep paralysis. Just at this moment, 2 women, one with short hair in a bob cut, the other with longer hair braided, and they were dressed in what my wife described the old-style school uniform. The bob cut lady asked in a very soft manner,
May we know the way to Xinchen?
I was lost for words, but at that point, I realized I was face to face with ghosts. In the blink of the eyes, the women dissipated into thin air, and I could move from my paralysis, and I shot up into an upright position. It was just past 3 in the morning, and I could not get back to sleep. At the break of dawn, I had to tell my wife she was right about her encounter 2 nights ago. But instead of making fun of me, she immediately called her mother, who perhaps is the most superstitious person we know. My mother-in-law was prompt to engage what she claimed to be a renowned Taoist medium, who issued her 3 talismans for a premium price. The instructions were to place on behind the headboard of our bed, one atop the door frame of our main door, and the last one to be burnt and bless the house with. Mother-in-law herself came and went through the process, and from the natural way she went through it, I was pretty sure she has done it umpteen times in the past. I was very skeptical that these pieces of paper would work, but I remembered what I saw, and it freaked me out tremendously. So if this could help absorb any fear in my wife, I was willing to engage in such practices without any scientific basis. As she came from our hometown, mother-in-law stayed with us for the remainder of that week, and it was barely a day since we affixed the talisman. That night, I was engrossed with my live football match. The missus was fiddling with her mobile, and mother-in-law was resting in the study room before my wife made a streak that even woke up her sleeping mother.
Where had the talisman gone?
She exclaimed. True indeed, the particular one on the top of the door frame had gone missing. No way the wind could blow it away, I explained. I had used generous amount of double-sided tape to ensure it was in place. As everyone was in denial that they had shifted the talisman, I used the stepladder to have a closer look of the wall of the door frame, and was taken aback with what I had found. There was a strong smell of something being burned, and what was even more absurd, it looked like a remnant of what remained of a burned talisman could be found on the frame itself. However, there was no soot on the wall to indicate any burning within the vicinity. This was a true case of the supernatural, and I was slowly being affected by what I had seen. The 3 of us could not concentrate to get on with what we were doing after that scary discovery, and naturally could barely catch a wink that night. The next morning, mother-in-law called the medium to consult him on what had happened to the talisman and what we should do next.
Wow, that's fierce.
He proclaimed.
What? I cannot hear you properly.
Then the phone disengaged and could not be contacted after that. After being shunned by the so-called renowned Taoist practitioner, we felt we might be swindled and got to source for a better alternative. That afternoon, the 3 of us went to Laojun Cave Temple, a haunt for local people looking for some spiritual assistance. Through the divination lot, we went to the temple's lot deciphering master to get our fortune read. It was labelled Ji Sang, or upper luck, and master asked us what do we want to ask about. I said just for general household health and luck, and he succinctly replied whatever bothering us would not be anything drastic and should clear up eventually, much to my relief. He did point out that my personal luck was a bit waning. This drew curiosity from me, leading me to divulge the scary encounters I had the past few nights to the master. A man of few words, the master just passed me an amulet made of peach wood and told me to see if it helps with our doldrums. It did help a bit. We still experienced the sleep paralysis, but were not visited by those scary lady ghosts. Upon reporting this to the old master, he told me he had discussed with 2 of his cohorts, and they made a divination reading based on information like my address and my paths. They confirmed that our recent move-in might have interrupted the souls that reside in the location for the longest time, something like a Di Fu Ling. One of the masters then handed me a chant manual and told me to go through this chant religiously every night. In any case of real danger, utter the following chant loudly: 九天应元雷声普化天尊. Well, we did what was instructed, but things at home weren't exactly going back to normal as before. So the same master who passed us the manuals dropped by and cleansed the apartment with some holy water and then passed us a folded paper fan, a gout bottle, and 3 talismans. That night was such a welcome change for me and the missus. No disturbance, no sleep paralysis. But such peace did not last long. The following night, history repeated itself when the talisman affixed on the top of the main door disappeared once again, leaving behind the strong adhesives still on the wall. Once again, I stepped up, anticipating some sort of burnt remains, but there was none. Instead, we found a lost talisman stuck on the back of our main door. The most absurd part was that there was no adhesive needed to get the talisman to stick it in place. I immediately messaged the master from Laoqing Cave Temple, and he said he will return to settle this matter the next day at noon. As scheduled, the master came with a whole complement of accessories and items for his ritual. Leaving us to wait at the living room, he started doing a ritual with a joystick altar at our bedroom. Not before too long, he made a startled exclamation that drew our attention to the bedroom.
This entity had no intention to negotiate and accommodate,
he said, pointing at the 5 joysticks who at this point had all extinguished. The joysticks were burnt in a 3 long 2 short manner, which signified death in Chinese saying. Starting to get flustered, the master then spread the room with uncooked glutinous rice and used cinnabar red ink to write another talisman.
This one is my ultimate talisman. It should be able to handle the most stubborn cases like this,
he proudly proclaimed. Then the 3 of us waited at the living room once again. All the time we could hear the commotion made by something messing with the glutinous rice on the floor in the bedroom. Then a loud explosion of a mirror, and we rushed into the bedroom to see shards of glass from the exploded mirror from my wife's dress-up table covering the entire bed. We could see the talisman all crumbled up and hurled on the floor, evidently like indicating what a futile attempt it was. The master immediately kowtowed at the entrance of the room and we followed suit. He then shouted loudly into the room,
I'm sorry, this had nothing to do with me. Please do not come and look for me.
After that, he hastily packed up and advised us to move out as soon as we could. Both my wife and myself were at wit's end and felt we could not stay at the apartment for the time being. Therefore, together with my mother-in-law, we decided to stay in a business hotel at least for the next 2 days. The first night was eventless and we had a good rest. The nightmare arrived on the second night. In the midst of my sleep, I felt that familiar feeling of sleep paralysis. When I opened my eyes, I had been transported to an abandoned location, and then I saw them. The 2 female ghosts in their historical garb, but with them was a third person, a male ghost. He was blurry. I could not make out what he looked like. As I tried to concentrate on the mysterious entity, I shook out of this nightmare and realized my wife also suffered from sleep paralysis. Upon consultation with people online and some friends, we were given sound advice to go westwards into Tibet and see if we could seek some spiritual help from the Tibetan monks. I posted a periodic update of my journey west. At this point, I was visibly fatigued from all these hauntings, sleep routine badly disrupted, and my job had been badly affected as I needed to take extended leave. I was determined to get our lives back on track, but whatever was haunting us was certainly not letting up. During one stop, I sent a recent photo of myself upon request. The photo focused on the wariness of my eyes in one particular stopover, and one commenter asked me what color clothing was I wearing. I replied I was wearing black, and there was shock when the same commenter asked who was that person in white from the reflection of my eyes. I did a close-up of that photo and got a real fright of my life. We arrived in Chengdu, and on that fateful hotel stay, my nightmare escalated to a whole new level. The familiar sleep paralysis, the familiar transition to that wasteland, the familiar pair of old-time lady ghosts, the familiar mysterious figure beside them. This time round, I told myself to concentrate upon the figure to have a better understanding and to quell my own curiosity. He was donning a dark greyish mishmash of a Taoist priest gown, and I could see an outline of an altar with joss papers littered all over the ground, but it was all in black and grey. Just at this moment, the greyish Taoist priest turned towards me and said,
"You will be mine soon."
Immediately, I woke up from the dreamscape and propped up from my bed and found out that I was in the business hotel at Chongqing where I first seen this trio. Just then, I realized I was trapped in many levels of dreamscape. Eventually, I found myself back in the Chengdu hotel room, and in the dimly lit room, I took a photo and posted what I had experienced at the first instant. One of my avid followers then pointed out that she spotted a red figure from the reflection of the room's TV. I could not be 100% sure on what she had saw, but at this point, I tend to trust anything supernatural happening in my surrounding. I was numb and very tired. There was, however, an interesting episode during this travel. A former army friend of mine asked me to try curbing this sequential haunting by using the crest of our army uniform. He mentioned he read that from soldiers from other countries and that it would work. Strangely, it did. But once again, it was a temporary remedy. Fortunately, we arrived at Lhasa, and the sacred land gave me a glimmer of confidence that I could combat this. By sheer coincidence, we crossed paths with a Tibetan monk, and I immediately unloaded my predicaments and sought any form of help he could offer. He led us to his monastery, which looked very grand and ornated. He introduced us to his teacher, the Lama of the temple, who despite his age, was very prompt to comprehend our wretched situation, and his piercing eyes could capture what was haunting us.
I'm very sorry whatever affecting you is something I do not have the ability to resolve,
he said calmly but clearly. He then passed me a blessed puba, a religious dagger from Tibet, which he hoped can delay the inevitable. I was awfully grateful. However, I thought it would cost me an arm and a leg, as I was wondering if the temple would be soliciting sales of such items to maintain the grand temple. Lama see through me and told me there was no need for payment, as he felt it was fate that brought us to him, and it was fated for him to render any help possible. His words brought me to tears, something a soldier would of course refrain from doing. I still donated whatever sum I could afford to the temple before our departures. After no joy in Tibet, we went back mainland to Incheon City at Ningxia, where someone recommended a skillful Taoist master. Grandmaster indeed carried a different aura when we first met him, and he did not require much information from us before deducing the ghosts affecting us. His expression turned solemn.
Let me be candid with you. I don't think I have the ability to ward off whatever that was bothering you. It was something I had not encountered in my years of practicing. I do have solution for the two female ghosts. In fact, they were seemingly harmless. They told me their names were Zhou and Xie respectively, and both passed on in the 1920s. I was able to hold them in a hulu and help them to reincarnate. However, you will have to stay in this temple for a week to grant me the time to process.
Sad to say, even at Incheon, I did not have a good sleep. I kept feeling someone was pulling my hair from my scalp, and the next morning, I was stunned to find chunks of my hair could be found on the pillow, and it seems to me like this was an act of defiance. The master too was taken aback at what transpired, but he said he was able to entrap the two female ghosts. We then decided to return to Chongqing, while still actively seeking for recommendations for some religious assistance or divine intervention. This led us to Guizhou, where a lot of people guided us to an unassuming master who we eventually got to know was a disciple from the Longhu Shan temple, but generally had retired from his practice. Upon getting acquainted with this Shifu, he told me to go procure a hulu container and then doodle on it at will. I did not think too much about it, and followed instructions before Shifu started his ritual. It was a simple ritual, much less pomp and circumstances as compared to many I had seen from the past few weeks, but it was still jarring to see how the hulu started moving on its own like something was fighting to escape from it. I even recorded this sight. Then the Shifu said,
"Alright, I have managed to trap the mysterious figure in your dream. He is not a ghost but a Chan. He was a powerful priest before his death, but even as a ghost he passed on for some apparent reasons. But due to his sheer power, he transformed himself into a powerful Jan who had the ability to trap ghosts. In this case, the two unfortunate lady spirits who had to do whatever he commanded them to do.
So what did this Jan wanted with me? I asked, after so amazed about what I've heard from Shifu.
He wanted you and your wife to die slowly in a tormented fashion before collecting your souls like that of the two female ghosts. Perhaps you can count yourself lucky that being a former soldier who had a sense of righteousness and mental strength that could not be easily found on civilians and made it an uphill task for the Jan, which pissed him off even more. The problem to begin with was that encountering a Jan is so rare and might be even treated like a mystical creature even in our teaching. It was not that the religious master you had met along the way were not good in their trade. It was that they never knew this was an elusive Jan. Myself had the pleasure, or maybe displeasure, to deal with one in my younger days, and it was never easy to ward off this Jan, as they were unpredictable and all came with varying level of capabilities.
Shifu then told me to stay with him for 49 days, as we needed to maintain the continual burning of joss sticks in order to get rid of the Jan once and for all, as myself and Shifu took turns to maintain it. At the end of the 49 days, I thanked Shifu profusely and wanted to pay him a sum of money of what I could conjure for his help, but I rejected, saying that he was just doing something as instructed by higher powers. And Shifu told me,
Do you remember when one of the female ghosts asked about the direction to Xingchen? The place we are now used to be called Xingchen in the 19th century.
At this point, I realized that the ghosts were guiding me for help from the onset. After this ordeal that really drove me to a mental breakdown and crippled me financially, I actually found solace in meeting so many kind souls who went their extra mile to help me and my wife, who were strangers to begin with. It started with a malicious intent, but it ended in such heartwarming fashion that showed me that there is still hope in humanity. What do you think of this epic tale? The roller coaster ride really scared me at multiple points, but I was glad that Lee and his wife were able to be safe at the end. You can be staunchly non-believer of the unknown, skeptical of all the stories we have shared on this platform, and generally not into religions, but it is important to keep an open mind when you encounter something you cannot explain through logic or science. From the story, we also get to know that those religious masters who have the capabilities to help, they usually do not practice for the aim for earning money, but of course, it was common practice for us who received the help to donate whatever we could afford, whether the money was to be used to maintain the temple or help the needy. Thank you for staying with me till the end, and do remember to like, share and subscribe and get notified for more content on this platform. Stay safe and good health to all.